Ladies and gentlemen, members and friends, we're all here. Look at us all. Our mug's back on your screen. I hope you're tuning in live. I know there's going to be a few people bumping in as we come along tonight. And there's going to be people who are watching along later because this pack did sell out, which has been really exciting to see how the popularity of these packs. Oh, Adam's blanked out black for a second. We'll hopefully get him back in the stream in a second. Technical hiccups, let's call it. Andrew, how are you?
I'm very well. I normally black out at the end of the night, not at the start. So it's, we're not doing too well there.
Okay, Adam's back. Hello, Adam. Hello, Adam. Can you hear us? Are you there? I don't think he can hear us either.
It's looking that way.
His stream was working literally up until 5 seconds before we went live, just for those watching along at home. So,
indeed.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Matt, I am very well. Fantastic to be here. You're looking well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
We're just chatting before we went live. At what time do you crack this? What time do we get it happening? And it sounds like we're getting straight in.
Yeah, we may as well. It's Malternative Boilermakers tonight. We've lost Adam properly, lost him this time. Here we go. Bring him back in. Here he is. Here he is again.
I'm back. Sorry.
Okay, he's back and booming.
I couldn't hear anyone.
Yeah, we were saying hello to you, and you were just staring into space. It was quite a look.
Are we cracking?
Yeah, Malternative Boilermakers, Rattenhund, classic Pilsner. You know what? Today's been quite warm. So this is a lovely way to start the evening with you all. Crack that beer. It's been a beer month for us. It's all about good beers, and in fact, we've got a lovely little promotion with Hop Nation this month. So if you're referring your friends to join, we're sending you a slab of this. Come on, folks!
It's going to be one of the most aromatic beers to ever come out of a can. That is just so.
Isn't it great?
The hops just leaps out of you before you know it.
It's a very classic Pilsner note to it, though. It's lovely.
Oh.
I'm going to really struggle to make this last through 5 drams. That is delicious.
That's crushable.
Yeah, that is crushable.
Oh, I haven't heard that word for a while.
Well, Matt, what's your favorite one?
No, look, for a long time, one of my favorite beers in summer has been the Kaiju Crush, but I think the Rattenhund is going to be overtaking that, actually.
It's deletable.
And Matt, is this in the past? These guys have done something very special just for our event. Is this been put together specially for tonight, or is it's a stock standard affair?
No, I mean this beer is commonly available. This is not like a one-off. Okay. Yeah, this is their classic Pilsner. And it's one of my favorite sort of more recent brews from them. And so along with yes, we've worked with Hop Nation before, which is that collaboration between SMWS, Whiskey and Almond, and Hop Nation, where we produced the Carbonado going back a few years. That one. There's a longer backstory to that, which I won't go into now. But the real shame was there were 2 beers, there were 2 casks, and that second beer, which was called Scorpion Grass, all got tipped down the drain. It wasn't good enough, but
they weren't too keen on it from memory.
They weren't, and that was from a Blair Athol cask, and they weren't too keen on it. And I remember tasting it and going, "Yeah, I'm glad we tipped that." It's pretty horrid stuff.
More power to them as well. I mean, fair play to any producer who realizes that something didn't work out and is prepared to tip it down the drain rather than cut their losses and try and flog it or sell it off.
Exactly.
We've lamented many times about some whiskies that have gone on the market and they really shouldn't have. I always have great respect for people who are prepared to do that. Yeah.
I mean, you can understand the whiskey conundrum in their country, and it's like the price per liter of beer versus whiskey is if you count it aging time and wood and everything, it takes a lot more out of it. But yeah,
for sure. But at the end of the day, when it's reputation, you can't put a price on that.
Exactly. Now, before we kick off properly, folks, welcome to Malternative Boilermakers. And I just want to quickly just run through some basics of tonight. It is, of course, part of our beer month. It's a beer Outturn, and that's why we're starting with a Pilsner. But we want to shake things up a bit, not just do barley-based spirits with barley-based drinks. So we're doing Malternative Boilermakers. But a few announcements before we get started. This morning, we dropped 2 full gathering sets on the site from the September lineup. We had a lot of members come to the gathering events throughout the country and go, how do I get a bottle of that one, that the Japanese exclusive or Danish exclusive, etc. And we said they're not available. But we had 2 complete sets left after the end of all the events, and so we've popped them online. They're available like right now, of course. So I'll show you. We just popped that on the screen, and we can all, there you go, boom. So if anyone's interested in one of those, they are available now. We have also sent out the details for the 40th anniversary bottling, which has its own custom walnut plinth and display case and lapel and everything that comes in that box. So that they're landing shortly. The expression of interest link has also gone out, but in case you missed it, I'll throw it up on screen there as well, in case you want to join that. There's been a lot of interest in this bottling, actually, which has been great to see. But just in case you missed it, there it is. It's on our site as well. And for those also playing along at home, there's the order we're doing it in, which is the same order that's on your menu. So we're going to start with the A9.1, and we'll just bring that screen back down a bit, and we'll pour A9.1, folks. Muscovado meringue. Okay. So welcome to Armagnac.
God, who put the lids on these this month?
Susie!
Susie.
Someone's got stronger thumbs than I do. All right.
So, just to give a bit of introduction, not to this spirit, but to some of the other coding that we talk about at the society sometimes. I'll maximize the screen for a second. Many of you will be familiar. I mean, some members will already know this, but I know we get new members through every month who are learning all about this. But we have a different coding system for other spirits. And there's now 8 different prefixes outside of single malt. So the single malt codes are just the numeric codes that you know, like 19.45 or whatever the code is. The first number indicates the distillery code. The second number indicates the number of casks we've bottled from that distillery that have passed our tasting panel. So you might see some codes like 35.400, which means we've bottled as many as 400 casks from distillery 35, so we get a lot of them. But other codes you might see like 123.8. I don't know if that's correct, but it's, we've only bottled 8 casks in the last 40 years from that distillery. However, sometimes we are lucky to get other spirits through from other regions and other types of spirit that aren't just whiskies, or sometimes are different types of whiskey. So A for Armagnac, B for bourbon, C for cognac, G for grain whiskey, which is, of course, whiskey, but not single malt. GN for gin, R for rum, RW for rye whiskey, and the newest entrant to our coding system, CW for corn whiskey. So we're going to explore at least 4 out of those 8 tonight in what's a Malternative night of exploring different types of spirit in a glass. And sometimes it's just, we call them alternatives. I think that's a fun name for it, like alternatives to malt. Sometimes you want to reach for something a little bit different on the shelf. And I promise you, one of the best things about the society alternatives, about our non-malt whiskey spirits, is that they're some of the most exciting, and they go through the same rigorous panel assessment and selection for bottling. How are we nosing this one, folks?
That is absolutely delicious. I was actually tasting a sample of Australian whiskey last night that a local distiller sent to me. And it was very reminiscent of Armagnac. And the first thing I wrote down in my tasting notes was, this is a very Armagnac dram, which was quite unusual for an Australian whiskey. And as soon as I put this up to the nose tonight, I had to make sure I hadn't accidentally poured the wrong sample, and I was revisiting that Australian one again. It's
yeah, right,
lovely drop.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Getting also like chocolate praline on the nose.
So let's explore Armagnac for a second. Some of the basics of this spirit. Usually single distilled. It doesn't have to be, but it usually is single distilled, and it usually from a combination of 4 different grape varietals. It can use single grape varietals, but there's often 4 different ones, which is Barco, Colombard, Folie Blanche, and Unia Blanc. That's the part I had to write down. I'm just checking I'm saying those words right. But yeah, usually single distilled as opposed to cognac, which is usually double distilled. So also a .1 tonight. It's actually 2 .1s tonight. So that's a .1 for us. And so it's the first time ever bottled. Now you can see that the proof on this one is 51.9% as well. So it's actually pretty low comparison to, say, some of the other spirits we bottle regularly. It's youngish. It's about 13, 14 years of age. And being
you're dealing with an Armagnac when it's 13 or 14 years, and you describe it as being youngish.
Yeah. That is true, isn't it? That's a good point, Andrew. You don't really see too many like much younger than this in the Armagnac world. I mean, you see some 10, 11-year-old, but they go by vintages, just like we've gone by vintages in this case. So it says year 2007. I think the Society bottled this particular cask either just last year or something. So maybe even a 15-year-old.
Well, it's very rare to get a single cask. I'll say brandy, whether it's cognac or Armagnac. The wonderful brandies are usually made by concocting and vatting numerous casks together of different ages and vintages to get that style. And so, a young spirit will be blended with an older spirit to achieve what they're looking for. So to actually, as you say, get a single cask and a vintage with something this young, you don't see it too often.
No.
Oh. So what's a typical age for Armagnac, would you say?
I mean, it varies.
You won't see too many age statements. I mean, there are some vintage Armagnacs around, but they tend to be quite old. I've forgotten the name of that bottler now. Matt, you and I have been privileged to try a few of their ones. It's got the white label with the fancy black writing on it. And they tend to have vintages that go back to the 60s and 70s. They're always they're well aged.
Yeah.
There was a bit of a practice going around for a while where, once you sort of got to around about the age of 40 and north of that, it just, unless you'd won lotto, it just was no longer practical to try and find a Scotch whiskey from your birth year. It was, the price was just getting well beyond what most of us could afford. But interestingly, you could sometimes find a vintage Armagnac from your year, and it was much, much cheaper. So personally, I went through a spell 4, 5, 6 years ago when I had a lot of friends sort of turning 40, 45, 50, and we were drinking Armagnacs from their birth year as a result.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that is the funny thing, isn't it, Andrew? You can actually still find like birth year Armagnacs that are going to be about 1/10 the price of a birth year whiskey.
Yeah. I find this is a really interesting drop. I thought it was very delicious off the start, but then when I paired it with the beer, the Armagnac went a little bitter for me. It didn't seem to match the sweetness of the malt in the Pilsner.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's an experiment tonight, I guess, with the beer and those different non-barley spirits. Betty said it's like butterscotch with water. That's a good tasting note. Betty, I was going to say, I'm afraid to say, I think I know your palate pretty well. There's no smoky whiskeys tonight. I'm sorry. And Jaden Taylor says it's like eating a cherry ripe and then smoking a cigar afterwards. Delicious. Yeah, that cherry ripe is a good call, actually. Really like that sweet red candy sort of smell on the top end.
Yeah, butterscotch is a good get there, Betty.
I was going to mention that actually all of these bottlings we've got availability of all of them tonight. So if anyone was wanting to grab any, there's some of them alternatives you can find there.
Oh,
it didn't work.
I think I would love this with a dark ale. But for New South Wales viewers, I think Tooheys Old, maybe the White Rabbit dark ale.
You're definitely right, Andrew. The beer definitely kills all the sweetness on the palate.
One of the coolest things. Sorry, Adam. Yeah.
No, I was going to say it's. Are you guys a dram first then beer, or beer first then dram?
It's a good question.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Traditionally, the Scots would always go the other way. The half and half, you'd have your beer first and your whiskey chaser.
Right.
But then, I don't know. I always like to give the whiskey first billing, or the spirit first billing, I should say. But that's just me.
Yeah, fair enough. I usually gravitate to that too. What were you going to say, Matt? Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it's also worth noting, just a little Armagnacism, that when we talk about like Scotch whiskey distilleries, if we say this is from distillery, 123 or something, then you know that the spirit has come from that distillery in that location, if that makes sense, because that's where it is. Whereas with Armagnac, there is a lot of gypsy distilling, and a lot of there's stills that are constructed on the backs of carts that are taken to wineries to distill there for a number of weeks before moving on. So this spirit that we're tasting is from a particular winery, not so much an Armagnac distillery, if that makes sense. And that's the way that Armagnac works. It's a byproduct of wine being a brandy, not a. You don't really sort of count Armagnac distilleries, or there are some, but it's not really part of that story.
There's a fancy word for it. It's peripatetic. Peripatetic.
Peripatetic, I think you're right. Yes.
Yeah. For basically mobile stills.
It gives you all sorts of ideas, doesn't it?
Yes.
Like what if I bought a ton of barley and a trailer? Sort of ideas in your head.
You don't have a trailer and a ton of barley?
and a few sheets of copper? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Missing out here. Well, that's lovely. Actually, of the Armagnacs we've bottled at the Society in the last few years, I can safely say I think I've enjoyed the slightly younger ones rather than the slightly older ones. They just have this lovely vibrancy to it. I think I can say a lot of brandies are like that for me, though. I mean, a lot of different Armagnacs are like that, especially. And there's a great comment here from someone saying Armagnac is cognac with depth and personality. Oh, I think that's a cop out. You can get lovely cognacs with depth and personality. It's just that whiskey drinkers prefer Armagnacs, I've always found.
That's David Powell who's popped in with that comment, and David. I agree with you.
Well. Okay. Shall we look at the next spirit in our lineup?
We shall.
Okay.
Yeah, I've always found cognac for me, when someone offers you a really great cognac or a really great malt, for me, I've always just preferred the malt. There's just more depth, there's more body. Cognac, and brandy in general, for me, it's always been just more lighter, fruity, obviously because it comes from fruit. It's always had this sort of ethereal note, and I've always just enjoyed the depth, certainly of malt whiskey. But Armagnac for me just seems to have a bit of a stonier, bolder edge over its cognac counterparts.
It's usually got a bit more it's a bit more mineralic. Yes,
I was going to say stonier. It's
stonier, right?
Armagnac's a bit stonier, and then you've said mineralic, so we'll go with the same thing there.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, that's all right. Yeah. All right, C8.1. So we've tried an Armagnac. Let's try a cognac. Now we really threw something special in here. It's slightly older livery as well on the front label of this bottle. So we've had a recent refresh to some of the single cask spirits, but this one flew under the radar of a rather rarer offering from the SMWS. So let's have a nose at this one.
I was about to ask about that because it's a bottle shape as well, livery.
Yeah, no, it was a slightly older livery. It had a bit of a refresh.
Tell you what, you're in for a tough night when the second cab off the rank is 28 years old.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When it's an $800 cognac straight off the second spirit in your glass.
I'm getting like a really juicy, orange phyllo cake.
I'll see your cake for dessert, and for mains, I'm having duck à l'orange.
No. I'll accept that.
Orange cake, orange duck. Good.
Oh, there's wonderful blood orange notes in there. And for breakfast, let's have marmalade on toast.
Yes.
Rum flashbacks.
So just to give a bit of context to the spirit for everyone playing along at home, cognac is more closely linked to the whiskey world than Armagnac is in production. So it's double distilled, and it's from the cognac region, or cognac commune, I should say, of France, and it's has to be aged a minimum of 2 years in wood. So in this case, 28 years, a fair bit longer than the minimum, but much more controlled in its AOC, its appellation, and much more, much closer linked to whiskey. So it's essentially a double distilled brandy. And just to avoid confusion, as Andrew sort of hinted at before, both Armagnac and Cognac are types of brandies, just as Scotch and Bourbon are types of whiskey.
That is delicious.
I think I prefer that to the Armagnac, just quietly.
That is hands down one of the best cognacs I've had in a very long time.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. That's cognac with a lot of character, isn't it? Like,
isn't it?
That's something to hang your hat on. Oh,
wow!
It really bounces out of the glass, doesn't it? Wow.
Yeah, but there's depth on the body. Sorry, depth on the palate, I should say. Depth on the palate. Wow. I mean, yes, there's fruit there, but there's sweetness. There's honey notes, honey drizzled on porridge. The nose has this really fragrant potpourri to it.
Honey on porridge is right.
Absolutely stunning.
Wow.
Matt's one of the things I've locked away in my tasting memory bank, and you were there on the night. How long ago was it now? 6 years ago or something? 5-6 years ago, certainly before COVID. We had that French evening at a restaurant here in Sydney for the Society, and we had was it 2 Armagnacs and 3 Cognacs that night as part of this French meal, where each dish was matched to a Society Cognac or a Society Armagnac. Absolutely fantastic French affair. And I remember well the 5 drinks we had that night. This stands head and shoulders above anything that we had that evening. This is just wonderful.
Isn't that something else?
Now, I have a question. I've heard the phrase aged in glass before in regards to cognac. Is that a thing?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a thing. It's a thing with Armagnac and Cognac, but more prevalent in Cognac.
So
they don't have to disclose that either.
Glass, right?
I mean, because it's that whole thing about how wine ages in glass, and so distilled wine, by that theory, also ages in glass. It ages very differently from wood, but you'll find a lot of cognacs are, say, 8 or 9 years in wood, and then 20, 30 years in glass, and or even sometimes it's just might be 5 years in glass at the end of a maturation. And that's usually where a lot of the marrying of spirit comes along, and settling.
All right. Well, the dram was sensational. I'm now moving on to its pairing partner.
Let's try that beer again.
And when you go to the nose, that's really fascinating. The go from the cognac to the beer, and tell me that doesn't smell like you're sticking your nose into the washback at a distillery.
Yeah, it's really like dry and like
dry
savory wash.
Getting the yeast of the wash.
Oh, that's great.
That's a fine selection.
Yeah, I think straight away we're seeing just how varied, and like even just between those first 2 spirits, even though they're both brandies and they're both very different there, and they're both just. I'm going to go back to nosing that first glass for a second. Yeah, totally worlds apart. Well. That's fantastic.
Once you've had the beer and you go back to the cognac, I mentioned honey on porridge earlier. It's now golden syrup on porridge.
Jaden Taylor's getting a lot of peaches. Yep. That's a good call. I think the porridge, honey porridge that Andrew said earlier. Bang on for me.
Jaden, would you say millions of peaches?
I get this. There's so much butterscotch as well. And even the slightest hint of like that rancio, like wine cellar rancio sort of smell.
Yeah.
After going beer and then cognac on the palate, 100% peaches. Maybe not millions, maybe in the thousands, but definitely there.
That only difference between
call,
millions
Jaden.
and thousands of peaches, yes.
It's a subtle difference, but the palate can detect.
Well, they come from a can, they'll put there by man. So,
I've heard this in a factory downtown.
A whale of a calls.
I think I already made that reference to Adam once, and you didn't get it because you.
Yeah, because I'm young. Jesus.
Okay, that was good. Thank you. We're live.
Great.
Oh, sorry. I thought we were just having a conversation. Yeah.
Now we're live. Okay, good. Yeah.
That was
Okay,
absolutely
phenomenal.
wonderful.
I'm going to park a little bit of that and see how it develops over time. And I think, again, for the benefit of those playing along, I mean, you might want to park just to maybe 5-10 mils of that if you can, because I sometimes find with those kind of older Armagnacs and spirits, there's such nosing drams, and they take a bit of time to really just expand a bit. So we might move on to our next whiskey for the brevity of time.
And you say this C8.1 is still available on the website?
I did. How about that?
Oh my god!
It's still available. We only have 10 bottles of it. In fact, if you use your phone right now, you can
say?
nine bottles of it. Nine, sorry. Yeah. And that's available on the site here. Malternatives here. All 5 casks that we're tasting tonight are available, and you can actually go straight to the product category of all those 5 right now on the website. And I'll stop clogging up Andrew's and Adam's faces. There we go. Done.
You can stick the society logo in front of my mug anytime, mate.
Yeah.
Halloween costume.
All right. CW 1.5. Now, I spoke earlier about how we're welcoming CW into our coding system at the society.
Oh, this is great.
This is rather cool. So this is a 12-year-old New Oak charred barrel from distillery CW1, a Kentucky distillery. Could tell you what it is. Now I remember when this is the second time for me tasting this one, and I remember thinking just how unlike bourbon it was, in that it was so. I mean, it was very bourbon-ish, but it's also quite much more subtle. Far more delicate and nuanced than your typical sort of brash kind of bourbon. It's also a lot older than most bourbons. Most bourbon. I was
about to say, like, is that just a function of age?
It might be, yeah. I mean, it's also a function of the fact being such a high corn in the mash bill.
What? Oh, I'm sorry. You'll have to refresh my memory. In order to legally be called bourbon, it's got to have 51% corn, which this one qualifies as. So is there an upper limit at which point there's too much corn and it's no longer bourbon? What makes this a corn whiskey and not a bourbon? Is it because the corn is 80 and not 79%?
That's it. So corn has to be 80% or higher to be corn. Corn whiskey doesn't have to be barrel aged. That's the other trick with this as well. It can be just presented as like a moonshine. That's same for bourbon, actually, I should say. But and it has to be barreled slightly lower as well. So it has to be barreled at 62.5% or 125 proof or lower.
Right.
So there are some slight stipulation differences between corn whiskey and bourbon. Bourbon has to be 51% corn, made from a mixture of 51% corn or higher.
So when you say
matured in New York, also corn whiskey doesn't have to be matured in New York. That was the other thing. It can be matured in refill wood or.
So that's probably the thing. I suspect more than the mash bill. I suspect it's actually the maturation.
Probably the maturation, yeah.
That's stunning on the palate.
Yeah. Bourbon can go into a cask at 80% ABV. Corn can only go in at 62.5. That was the other one.
So you know how you said corn whiskey and bourbon don't have to be barrel aged?
Nope.
It could be moonshine.
Well, bourbon. Sorry, bourbon has to go into wood, but it can be in wood for 10 seconds.
Okay.
You can flash a bourbon past wood and call it bourbon. Straight bourbon has to be 2 years, and then bottled in bond has to be, I think it's 4 years for bottled in bond.
So corn whiskey doesn't have to be barrel aged?
Nope.
So then my next question is there a minimum age for corn whiskey to be corn whiskey legally?
No.
Not even if it's barrel aged?
Not even if it's barrel aged. No, you can put it in a barrel for a day. Yeah.
Does straight corn whiskey exist?
Not yet, but probably will eventually. As another subcategory. I always think that the category rules around American spirits is a total mess. And most of it's born out of just post-prohibition, and some of it's pre-prohibition, and it's all a mess. This distillery was founded actually just post-prohibition, so 1933, 34, somewhere around there.
Lee online has made the comment, very sweet and smooth. Are you sure it's 61.7%? I'd agree with him. There's nothing about this that would make you think you're drinking north of 60.
No, definitely sure it's 61.7 there, Lee. But a lovely example of just, how, I know it's one of those things that doesn't make so much sense, especially in American bourbon, but American whiskeys, I should say, but it's quite light for a 12-year-old whiskey as well in color. And it's just got this lovely sort of, I don't know, it's that cinnamon scroll note to it.
We're probably speculating a bit here, Matt, but the cask type is described as new oak charred barrel. Isn't that just what every bourbon gets filled into?
Yeah.
New oak charred barrel.
Yeah. You can put corn you can do straight corns into new oak like this, but yeah.
Of course, I'm just saying for all intents and purposes, it's more or less a bourbon.
But a very high corn bourbon.
A lot of corn. Cornin.
And look, it's not often you drink a 12-year-old bourbon, is it? Or 12-year-old American whiskey.
It's worth emphasizing that point, really. Like most bourbons on market, even like mass-produced ones you see out there, like your Dickel's and Jim Beams and whatever.
Jim Beam White Label is 4 years old. Biggest selling bourbon on the planet, 4-year-old spirit.
Yeah. The biggest shame, you know what? The biggest shame about that particular product is that it's shipped to Australia still at 51.5% and bottled here at 40.
Blowing the lid on the whole operation.
I just want to know where that shipping container is, Get to it before it gets the watered down with Australian water.
All right. The corn whiskey is lush. I'm switching across to the beer now.
A question from DS: is it a single corn? Well, not really. It's from one distillery, so it's a single corn supply. I don't know whether it's a multitude of different corn varietals. I don't think they'd be using any sort of heirloom or blue corn or anything like that in this. So it's probably a yellow corn single distillery, but it's 80% corn. So 20% is a bit of probably a bit of rye and a bit of wheat and a tiny bit of barley as the enzyme. But I'm single. It's hard to answer that because it's not really a single corn. But it is a single cask whiskey from this distillery. I don't think you ever see the word single corn though. Syrupy says Betry. Yeah,
implies one corn.
I accidentally shortened both of your names then, Betty. Sorry. I said Betry. Okay. Betty says Syrupy. Wow. How's the beer going?
Very, very tasty.
Yeah.
That's a pretty versatile Pilsner.
That is pretty versatile. Top points to Hop Nation. That's great.
Tell you what, you timed this well doing this in spring. I know what I'm filling my fridge up for with summer coming along.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt, do you know any way I can grab a slab of these?
Oh, wait. Is there a way that you can grab a slab of these? Yes, of course. There is. Refer a friend to join the society. You have 1 week left, folks. We're giving away a slab of beer. Or your friend just needs to join. Put your name in the referral box. We'll send you a slab. Hop Nation will send you a slab of beer on us, just in time for summer. How good is that?
I do love summer and beer.
Hi, all from hospital. Dov, I know you've had your operation. Good to see you in good spirits and joining us virtually, even if you're not having a dram at the moment. And I got a floral honey taste from the corn whiskey. Lovely. Yeah, floral honey. That's a good call.
You just said slab of beer, Matt. Have you been working on your Victorian there? You've been taking Victorian lessons.
What? Hang on. What do you guys call them?
It's a case. It's a case of beer. And if you're in Queensland, it's a carton of beer. And if you're in Western Australia, it's not nearly enough.
Case I can understand. Carton, I'm not sure about that one.
What about it? Would it be Queensland? What's a Queensland one? Is it a cube? Probably a cube of whiskey, a cube of beer.
It was a carton when I was living up there.
Okay, yeah.
Just reminds me of milk.
Carton of milk, yeah. Could be a carton of milk.
Dov, you're our Queenslander. Maybe you can confirm for us.
Yeah, Dov, if you're still online, let us know if we're getting it right. What is it up there? Is it a carton case slab? It's got to be another.
As you can see, folks, we contemplate the deep questions here on our live stream.
I'm in deep thought right now.
What's the collective term for 24 cans or bottles in one packaged container? You know, it's
of 4x gold.
Okay.
There you go. Wow. Hey, that's it was probably. I've been enjoying Scotch whiskey for a bloody long time now. It was probably only about 10 or 11 years ago I really started to appreciate and enjoy American whiskey, and this for me is right up there. That's an amazing drop. And look, I've got a bit for this distillery. It produces some amazing spirit. In fact, the first ever society bourbon that came into Australia way back in 2006 came from this very distillery.
Yes. But back then they were just B numbered, weren't they? Like B3.
It was just B. Yeah, it was such a it was a curiosity. I've never forgotten it. We got 24 bottles in. This is 2006. It was a 6-year-old bourbon, and the membership at the time, and maybe the reputation that bourbon had at the time, at least in this country, meant it wasn't the most popular drop. And I think we sold 2 bottles and then had 22 left on our bottling list for a long time after that. And we featured at numerous tastings around the country. Without it really.
And it was a quarterly there, wasn't it? That was a quarterly bottling list as well. That was quarterly.
Yeah, that was back in the days of an Outturn going out every 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, the whole scene of American whiskeys. When you said you first got into it about 10, 11 years ago, what would you say? What was it like? What was one of the turning points for you?
If I'm really honest, probably just being a bit more open-minded. I think I was a real purist. I really liked my single malt. American whiskey was just some other category that I thought I'll let other people enjoy that. Yep. And I was just acknowledging that there's great spirit made from other grains in other countries, and being prepared to invest time and money into exploring that. And like anything, I'm sure it's the same as people's experience with Scotch whiskey. You get introduced through a cheap blend, Johnny Walker, and you kind of associate the category with that. I'd had my young nights out as a late teenager and early 20s with the Jim Beams and Jack Daniels and all the rest of it, and was then prepared to give it a miss for the next 15, 20 years after that.
Right.
But then when you go back and by that stage, we were starting to see some really nicely aged and well-produced bourbons coming into the Australian market. Elijah Craig 12-year-old, for example. Some of the Wild Turkey expressions, the 10-year-old, for example. And all of a sudden, yeah, we were starting to get into this country. Bourbons that had been really well put together were complex. They weren't just a smash of vanilla, as a lot of the days they were earlier on. Just being open-minded about it, and realizing actually there's some complexity here. There's an array of flavors. It's not as one-dimensional as perhaps bourbon's marketing would have us believe 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, right. Yep. Yes. I think for me it was, I think some of the American whiskeys that really sort of turned around for me was some of the like early releases of Russell's Reserve.
Yeah.
I'm tasting that going, it's a 10-year-old bourbon. So it's might be closer linked to say a 10-year-old Scotch whiskey or something, and being quite amazed with that. And Booker's for me. Booker's was always one of those ones that was like, it's like it was a real sort of smack in the face because it was a cask strength bourbon, and that was back then. You wouldn't really find many cask strength bourbons on the market at all. So, yeah. And
then also courtesy of our good friend James France, bringing in through his Vanguard brand, exposure to things like Michter's,
yes,
and those other ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a very enjoyable corn whiskey. We might press on to our next whiskey in a moment. Adam, what's some of your earliest American whiskey memory that you remember thinking this is like an American whiskey you tried or enjoyed?
Well, I mean, Matt, as you probably know, I got into bourbon before I got into Scotch,
as most Australians do.
Yeah. Well, but it wasn't just like the Jack and Coke when going out when you're 18 sort of thing. It was also Dad preferred bourbon, and so like I remember when I turned 18. It was a weeknight. I think it was a Wednesday night. And we had a Jim Beam small batch. I remember the exact day because I only had 2 periods of class that day, and basically.
I'm glad you clarified. I mean, to know the day of the week is unusually specific.
No, it was a memorable day. I also got a Mikey fine because I hadn't like updated my like concession card or something because I just turned 18. It was a weird Victorian thing, but so like small batch Jim Beam was my first proper introduction, and then from there it was Maker's 46, Wild Turkey Rare Breed, and I think the Rare Breed Wild Turkey is probably one that stands out with the Maker's 46. But I also got a bottle of Russell's,
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So that's always stuck with me. That's sort of the Maker's 46, the Rare Breed, up until probably my 21st when I had a bottle of Dalmore 12, and then it was sort of a bit more of whiskey exploration, some Laddies and Port Charlotte, and now I'm here. God damn.
And now it's
you've ruined me.
I've ruined you.
It sounded like really good lyrics to your next single. That was.
Don't give him any ideas. No. Okay, so shall we move on? RW 5.3 American Rye Whiskey, exploring new frontiers.
There's an interesting degree of detail in the cask type on this one. Number 4 char with number 2 char heads. I can actually pick up that number 2 char head on the nose. Can you? It's just there in the background.
Well, for a second I thought you were being serious.
Almost never.
If you funnel your glass like this, you can also get the number 4 char on the sides. But
if you really look at it at the right angle through the right light, you can just see the difference in the charred heads.
If you get a blowtorch and just
on that note, by the way, bloody appealing color. That's
it is very, very, very copper, dark copper. This is with
focus on my camera here. Not bad.
Still focusing on your head. It's all good. We can still see we are now over in Indiana, folks. Now, another little bourbon misconception that you hear sometimes, especially from newcomers to the category, is that to make bourbon or, to make American whiskey, you've got to be in Kentucky, right? Like that's where we just were with CW 1.5. But you can make bourbon anywhere in the US. And in fact, these days, there's bourbon distilleries, single malt distilleries, rye distilleries, etc., popping up all over the US now. And someone said to me the other day, I've heard the number around 5,000 to 5,500 distilleries. That's including gin and vodka and everything in the US. But someone said to me the other day, there's over 500 distilleries just making American single malt in the US now. Which, for over here in Australia, we see like probably 5 or 6 of those brands. Really, when you think about it, you can say you've got Westwood, Westland, Balcones, name a couple more, Copperworks, maybe that's it. And there's like 500 of them now. Anyway, we're moving to Indiana.
Think about that for one moment. In the 2000 edition of Michael Jackson's Malt Whiskey Companion, there was one American distillery making single malt. It was the Anchor Bay Distillery at San Francisco. That was the 2000 edition of his book. So in 23 years, we've gone from 1 to 500 and something.
Wow.
Which is extraordinary.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, the amount of, I guess, extra demand on casks, on barley, on water, on all that kind of stuff to create American single malt is already changing. And we've seen a great number of actually American single malts through the society. If you look at codes 140, among others, throws you curveballs, haunts my memories.
140.4.
Yeah, that was one of the greatest bottlings I think you've put in the last 12 months. Fantastic. However, the biggest distillery in the US is in Indiana. And that's what this distillery is here. So RW 5.3 means it's rye whiskey for the coating. And it's, as Andrew pointed out, quite a bit of transparency and detail on both the mash bill and the cask type here. First fill barrel, level 4 char. So the heaviest char level with slightly less charred heads on the barrel. And it's a 95% rye, 5% malted barley. Can't really get away with it.
That's fascinating. Like, to me, this is not coming across as a hugely rye whiskey.
No.
For 95% rye, I'd expect a lot more spice, but maybe that's the number 4 char. Having
all the type of rye they use. Yeah, all the type of rye.
Oh yeah, okay.
It's not your typical Kentucky. It's not very like Rittenhouse or like that black pepper note's not there.
Yeah.
It's much more like rum truffles.
I went to the States in 2013 and spent a bit of time at the Kentucky distilleries and also Tennessee as well, and came home with a bottle that you can't get in Australia. It's Knob Creek rye, and obviously Knob Creek made at the Jim Beam small batch distillery there, and it was a really spicy, energetic rye. This for me is far more genteel, not gentle, genteel.
Genteel.
Yeah. So is number 4 char, is that like a 90-second sort of absolute flamethrower? What's the sort of timing on that one?
I can't remember the timing. It's certainly, the chars 1, 2, 3, 4 all obviously define how long it's exposed to the flame for and how deep and penetrative the char goes. I can't remember the time. Matt, you might perhaps know, or
level 4. They all have different timings, but the longest I've ever heard of was about 90 seconds.
It's the one they call alligator char because it results in the wood taking on the texture and pattern of alligator skin, and of course. Ardbeg in Scotland have played that to wonderful effect. When they brought out their releases that make reference to alligator and alligator char.
Yeah, right.
There's a great comment here. The nose on the RW reminds me of mint flavored toothpicks from my youth. It's funny you say that. Some rye whiskies like this, it's common to get either sort of a real black pepper note or a spearmint note, and some rye whiskies. A spearmint sort of flavor, like fresh spearmint leaves, and I get way more on the spearmint than I do on the pepper on this one.
Matt, there's a note that's popped up from Kristen. It's actually a great summary and condensation of the bourbon rules. Do you want to just throw that on the screen for everyone?
So bourbon rules can be distilled down to 51% corn, virgin American oak, and matured in the US for at least 2 years. That's pretty much right. There are some other micro stipulations around that, but there's
other little complexities, but that's the gist of it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the gist of it. That's for bourbon. But those rules don't say anywhere that it has to be matured in oak for a number of. Well, hold on a second. That's not entirely right then, Kristen, because bourbon can be matured for 1 day in oak. Straight bourbon has to be 2 years. But see what I mean? The rules over there are always a bit fuzzy.
But no one actually bottles non-straight bourbon, do they?
Oh, heaps do. Yeah, and sometimes even you can bottle blended bourbon, which doesn't even have. It's a mixture of different spirit types as well. You can add coloring to bourbon. You can add flavoring to bourbon. You can add strawberry essence to bourbon and still call it bourbon.
But the moment you do that, it's no longer bourbon.
No, it still is. It's just not straight bourbon anymore.
Oh, okay, straight bourbon. All right.
Yeah. Dov's now virtual tasting with us without any tasting kit here. Well, Dov, I'm glad you managed to find your internet connection again and join in with us. I hope you're on the recovery.
It's truly virtual.
Truly virtual.
Dov's ahead of all of us.
Oh dear, oh dear.
But Matt, to your point, I certainly agree that the something you definitely find in rye whiskies and also some bourbons is that mintiness. Yeah, you said spearmint. Yeah. I think peppermint sometimes comes through as well. Mint is a very common descriptor, and both an aromatic and a flavor characteristic that you find on some American whiskies.
And I love drilling down on what type of mint. Is it a spearmint? Is it a peppermint? Is it is it fresh spearmint or is it spearmint toothpaste? And then it's that sort of like drilling down on that. Someone's here said it would also make a great aperitif. The RW really gets the taste buds going. Yeah, that's a good call. It would make a good aperitif.
Good evening to you, Hems. Good of you to join us.
Oh, good to see you, Hems. Yeah, it's a really good one to start. I guess start the night. We maybe could have started on that one, but I figured that the French spirits were going to be so delicate, especially 28 years of age and whatnot. Probably better to hit the more brash sort of American spirits. It's almost like
no, I reckon you got that right.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Okay, well, hope we're all enjoying that rye. You may want to pour your.
So keen for this bourbon.
The B7, yeah. This has not had a feature anywhere yet, and it's worth noting this is from the same distillery as the rye, but totally different spirit because it's bourbon and it's B7.12 foraging fruits of the forest.
Is that right?
What?
No.
Nothing. I thought so. Yeah, good. Yes.
Once again, number 4 char with number 2 char heads.
If you've got a smidge of your cinnamon sins left at all, folks, go back and nose that and just see how delicate and how delicate it is. And of course, just another quick plug: all the alternatives we're tasting tonight are available on the website.
Just scan my head. You'll be fine.
Point your phone towards Adam's head and we'll all be fine.
That's an impressive goatee you've got there, mate. So.
It's the most complex goatee I've ever seen.
I just freshly dyed it black.
Would it be fair to say that this is not nosing like a typical bourbon?
I think that's fair to say.
That's nothing more than an observation. It's not a comment, but
I get a bit of Ovaltinis, the Ovaltini lollies in this one.
Oh, itsy beanie teeny weeny, chocolate malted. What was it? Chocolate coated Ovaltinis, yeah.
Ovaltinis, yeah. Yeah. I don't think they make them anymore. I don't think Ovaltinis exist anymore. I said Ovaltinis.
No, come on.
No, I don't think I do. I think they're like fantails of the world. They're gone. I can't. I haven't been able to find them for years. I said Ovaltini's at a tasting recently, and I sort of got a few looks of like, what are those? I was like, the things, the little malt lolly things.
Back when I was a Victorian, I used to go for piano lessons, and my mum would have to drive me from Crib Point to Frankston, and that was just the right journey to get through a packet of Ovaltinis. And so Mum would give us a pack of Ovaltinis, and you had to make them last from Crib Point to Frankston.
That would be a bit of a faster drive today, probably, but
it probably would. Yeah, this is
just eat them faster. Modern problems require modern solutions.
Today, Crib Point to Frankston is a 27-minute drive.
There you go.
The modern marvels of new highways and things. There you go.
The future.
I like this though. I think this is a good one to finish on as well. It's a little bit sweeter than the rye. It's like the Ovaltine lollies, bit like nicely caramelized, like burnt caramel.
It's a bit more of a subdued palate than I was expecting. That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm with you, Adam, on that. It's subdued. But that doesn't mean it's not. There's nothing there. There's actually
no, not at all.
There's a bit to that's a wow. Gee, the finish on that comes through with a second wave of flavour.
They're in stock at Woolies. They must be on the bottom shelf at this point. I haven't seen them in years. They're down there somewhere. They're the forgotten lolly section at Woolies.
Woolies Frankston.
Yeah, Woolies Frankston. But only if you arrive via Crib Point.
Yeah.
Oh dear, oh dear.
After having the beer, the nose on the bourbon's fantastic.
Yeah.
Not that it wasn't before, but just noticeably different. Like more barbecue. Oh god, I'm hungry too.
That is an incredibly sessionable bourbon. Wow. You would definitely break out your best cola for this one.
The most really organic Melbourne cola.
I'd bring the LA Ice for this one. Yeah.
I jest. This is stunning.
Yeah. Does anyone get like a coffee grounds? Like it's just like really slight coffee grounds in that at all? Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That would be an easy sipper as well. 56.3%. That is an easy drinker. That's lovely. Well, that's Malternatives, folks. This has been our evening of exploring some of the other spirits, tasting through them with you, and exploring some of the nuances of what those spirits are and how they taste. Because it's not just single malts of the society; it's sometimes other spirits, as we've seen from those other 8 codes that we get through. And we're very lucky at the moment to get a heaps, I should say, a really good stash of really good bourbons, ryes, cognacs, and armagnacs. And it's funny, we get members often saying, even for the space of a year or more, saying, when's the next armagnac? When's the next bourbon kind of thing? Well, we're flush at the moment. There's lots of them. So just check out the Malternatives link here. Pardon me.
There's a great sorry, Matt. I know you're probably in the wrap up phase, but there's a great comment from Hems. Do you want to just throw that up on the screen?
Here we go. Goes hand in hand with the beer here. Not my favorite on its own, but it's definitely my favorite pairing. I'm going to go back to my beer. Thank you, Hems.
And I think that's an interesting point, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, this was all about Boilermakers. This was about how does the spirit go with the beer. For me. For me personally, I think the best match, the two that fused together the best was number 2. I think the cognac.
I'd go either 2 or 3.
Yeah, the cognac was great.
But I think you could also make a case that this beer is so bloody good, you could pair it with anything and you'd be happy.
Great bit of feedback there. Obviously, absolutely love this virtual Boilermaker tasting. Please do these a bit more regularly. Well, we could do Boilermakers more regularly, but it's more we do a monthly virtual every single month. Andrew, I don't know if you can see who that is.
That's Lee Wills there.
Lee, good to see you.
Lee.
But yeah, more Boilermaker nights for sure. Whiskey and beer always go together, especially in warmer weather. Fantastic. Well,
sorry, Matt, you might know the answer. If not, Lee, chime in. What city or state are you in, Lee?
I think I can't remember off the top of my head.
Tick.
No pressure, Lee.
No pressure to tell your address online.
If you're in Sydney, I have good news for you.
Oh yes, Andrew is working on something there.
All shall be reviewed. Central Coast, New South Wales. Okay. All right. Well, if you want to come down to Sydney one night, we'll give you the Boilermaker night to beat all Boilermakers.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Betty, for that lovely comment. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. We've had about 20 people watching along live, and I'm guessing we'll have another 20 a few watching later on because there were a lot of packs sold out for this, which was great to see so much enthusiasm. I did bring up a photo earlier. I was just going to show just the sheer scale of MGP occupying those old Seagram buildings that they're in there.
Oh, you mentioned the distillery.
Oh, I said it. No. Yeah, it's quite a behemoth across the whole landscape there. It's truly a mega distillery that have mega consistency, and that's why we love getting some interesting spirit out of these guys. On that point, though, wow, it's almost like we've banged on about this a few times tonight. Look at this. We'll bring the beers.
Wait, a whole slab.
A whole slab?
A whole
case even. Maybe even a cube of them. So, invite a mate and the beers are on us.
Square.
We're sending every referring member a full case of Hop Nation Rat and Hund Pilsner on us. A $70 case of beer on us. There it is. Look at that. Melbourne Royal as well. Gold medal. Fantastic. So I encourage you to please be a part of that. And don't miss out on this offer to get it. It's coming into summer. Come on, you need that case of Pilsner. Beers and drams. It's coming. Thanks, folks. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. Thanks for all the amazing comments and questions coming through tonight. My favorite was the CW 1.5, almost like drinking creaming soda. Yeah, CW 1.5 is the loveliest drop. And Chris says, thanks for the stream, guys. Looking forward to getting stuck into the drams on replay. And it's all good. It's not called MGP anymore. What, did they rebrand? I don't think so. Did they? Oh, yes, they did recently because they've got bought by another company. Okay, I missed that detail. Sorry. Okay, thanks, everyone. And we'll see you all soon.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.